Welcome back, everyone, to this week's Foundry Sessions hosted by Nomad Financial. My name is Nam Lee. I'm on the strategy team here at Nomad, and joining me this evening is Benji Markoff, founder and CEO of Founder Shield. So we're running a little late, so we'll just go ahead and jump right into it. Benji, thanks for joining me this evening.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so will you guys just tell us a little about yourself, your background, and how you got to starting Founder Shield?
Yeah, kind of take it a little high level. Originally, I was working in accounting. Was not for me. Absolutely hated it. And so jumped ship, joined a startup, super early stage, kind of running BD and sales over there. And through that process, a 2-year process of working on the tech and building up the sales pipeline, and kind of wearing a bunch of different hats. One of them being buying insurance.
Yeah.
Kind of went through the process and the painful process of purchasing commercial insurance for a company, and kind of logged that in my mind. As just move forward with the job at hand, and then once that job was winding down, started talking to Mark Davis about new potential opportunities, new things that we were thinking about, where we can be disruptive in the startup space. And the kind of area that we focused on was insurance. And so the goal and the idea behind Founder Shield was to create a tech-enabled insurance brokerage, focusing specifically on high-growth venture-backed tech companies, and solving 2 issues. Number one, creating a seamless and intuitive process around purchasing and managing insurance. And number 2, help people understand what the fuck they were buying.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it boggled my mind that there was just, the industry as a whole relied on misinformation and lack of information in order to put fear in the buyer, and we kind of tried to focus on full education and helping our clients really understand the industry and the different economics associated with insurance and risk mitigation, and that meant like deploying a really content-heavy strategy and blog to really focus on that educational piece.
Yeah.
And the end goal is to really create consumers who are not just buying insurance because they're required by a contract or they're required by their investors to buy it. They're buying insurance because they see it as a value add and a good investment for their business and for the long-term growth of their company.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And then personally for you, I know you work with a lot of startup companies. What is it about that startup and tech community that really attracts you to the space?
I mean, I think it's just that it's the innovation. I mean, it's really cool to be able to make money off of selling a product to an industry that is constantly evolving, changing, and innovating. I mean, it's truly inspiring. And the types of companies we work with are companies that are curing diseases that haven't been cured, are fixing social and economic issues, companies that are doing stuff in the robotic space or the drone space, stuff in the medical space, really companies that are kind of pushing the boundaries of innovation.
Yeah.
And what's cool about insurance is you really get to kind of dive under the hood and get an incredible understanding and a big picture idea of what these companies are doing and what their goals are, not just for the next year, but for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting.
Now, sorry, let me fix the screen here quick. So let's focus on your specialty then. Let's turn our attention to insurance. So I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, the different types of companies. Are you guys focused on any specific industry, or can you just talk about the type of clients you work with?
Yeah, I mean, we're for the most part industry agnostic. We have a lot of kind of expertise in different industries, whether that's robotics on demand services, marketplaces, crypto, or your standard kind of run-of-the-mill e-commerce business or manufacturing businesses. What we do focus on, and the types of clients that we really focus on servicing, are companies that are not stagnant, that have a fear of being stagnant, that are really focused on massive growth in a very short period of time. And part of the reason for that is as companies scale and grow, we're talking about companies that might be 10 employees and in a year from now might be 100 employees.
Yeah.
Their operations are constantly in flux and are changing. And their risk is constantly evolving, right? And so we're kind of that focal point, helping them understand how their risk is going to evolve over time, and helping the insurance industry understand not only where their business is today, but where their business is going to be. One thing that we saw a real problem that we focused on solving early on was that the insurance industry as a whole, and we're talking about like carriers, insurance underwriters, couldn't understand the value of working on insuring these smaller companies, right? They had a lot of kind of wrong or incorrect assumptions about the industry as a whole that led the insurance industry to kind of ignoring these types of companies and creating kind of price points that didn't necessarily match up with their risk exposure. And so other than kind of focusing on educating our clients from an insurance standpoint, we spent a lot of time educating the insurance community, helping them understand the massive potential of these types of companies. I mean, it's crazy, but even companies like Uber or Facebook had a hard time getting insurance early on. Yeah. And I'm sure those insurance carriers are, kicking themselves because of the massive opportunity that they just gave up on. And the reason was they were misinformed about where those companies could go, right? And what that technology meant from a risk mitigation standpoint and from an insurance standpoint. And so we try and bridge that gap.
Now, so what sounds like, so educating both sides of it. So what for founders that are kind of like looking to better understand the insurance space, what type of questions should they be asking themselves when they're thinking about coverage or, making sure their needs are met?
Yeah. There's a laundry list of questions that you could ask. To keep it super simple, and being a founder myself, I asked myself the same questions. The first question you have to ask is, if my business was ripped away from me tomorrow, right? What type of like net financial loss or impact would that have on me personally and on the people working on this project, right? And if the answer is that it's significant, right? And if you're working on a company and you're putting your blood, sweat, and tears on it, it should be significant. Then that means there's value in that company, right? And when there's value in a company, that means there's an insurable risk, right? And so that's kind of the starting point to understand, I should probably get insurance. Mm-hmm. People don't ask this question when they buy a house or buy a car because it's physical, it's right there. And if you bought a house, you wouldn't ask, should I buy insurance? Because you know that if some sort of catastrophic event happens, and in this day and age, they're happening more and more frequently. But flood, earthquake, hail, whatever it may be, fire. That could completely kind of destroy my investment in that house. It's not even a question. It's like, of course I need to get this insurance. And then you start asking yourself from a business standpoint, what are the types of things that could happen, right? Yeah. So if I'm, collecting data about my customers, right? Nomad Financial is collecting super sensitive data information about their customers from a tax standpoint, from an accounting standpoint, all the different types of CFO work that you guys do, super sensitive data. And then you ask yourself, well, what if that data got in the wrong hands, right? And if the answer is, that would be bad for our business, then you should explore insurance for those concerns, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times, a lot of insurance is initially purchased because there are contractual requirements. Yeah. But if you think if you are a B2B company, B2B service company, and you're providing a service to another business, what happens if, and especially as you scale and grow, you can't necessarily control every lever and every individual in your team. What happens if someone on my team or makes a false promise to a client, right?
Yeah.
Or says our product is going to solve X and it doesn't solve X, right?
Yeah.
What type of potential financial impact could that have on that client, right? Mm-hmm. And then you think about kind of the litigious nature of business in general, specifically in the U.S. And you should ask yourself, like, is there a chance that someone can bring a lawsuit my way, right? Maybe that lawsuit's frivolous, but at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter because you have to defend yourself, right?
Yeah.
And cost to defend is increasing every year. Legal costs are increasing, and so the question is, do you want to pay that out of pocket? Can you pay that out of pocket? Or can you make an investment in an insurance product that's going to protect you against the downside there?
Yeah. Now, continue on that kind of like education piece. I know, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of people think that insurance is more of like a contractual. How can you leverage, insurance in maybe strategically? Let's discuss more of the strategic approach here. How do you kind of educate a lot of your clients on that?
Yeah, so I think we have kind of two ways in which we do it really well right now, and we're constantly trying to figure out new ways to do that because I think education is such an important piece. So our content strategy is kind of the one in which we've had the most success on so far, and that's really about having a constant stream of new blog posts, guest blog posts, information that we put out online that is really targeted to very specific customers with very specific questions and needs. And one thing that we kind of saw in the space that kind of upset us was that any information you can find when you're doing research on insurance or insurance products, it's like asking a lawyer a question, right? You can't get the actual definitive answer, right?
Yeah.
You get a roundabout answer that you read it and then you kind of are more confused. And so we've tried to take the approach of being super direct and very specific and kind of speaking in language that people can understand and digest. And that's been super helpful. The other component is when our clients, we have our own internal or external client portal that our clients go and interact in order to be able to put information out there, so that we can go out and get quotes for them. That whole online portal has kind of educational tools and widgets as well, right? So, where you're asked a specific question, you can hover over it, and it'll tell you why we're asking that question, right? So you don't just go through the process and be like, I spent a half an hour on this, but I don't really know why. And I think when you educate someone beforehand or during that process, they don't come out of it with a negative experience. They come out of it understanding, like, okay, yeah, it might have taken some time, but I get why they've asked those questions, right? And I feel better about the time I'm investing in this because it makes sense. You go to a doctor and the doctor asks you a bunch of medical questions. You're not sitting there thinking, why am I wasting my time with these questions, right? Yeah. It's clear as to why those questions are needed to be asked, and we're trying to take the same type of approach here. Yeah.
So those takeaways are pretty key. For those clients, which is part of the educational piece. So let's circle around and let's talk about you as a founder in the startup community. Given that founders kind of like wear a lot of hats, you talked about earlier, that's kind of how you got started into down this route. How do you manage your time? How do you really try to maximize your energy and your time with projects and stuff like that during the week?
I mean, time management will always be a struggle for me. It's something that I constantly have to work on. But I find that, as our company is continuing to scale and grow, we'll probably double our team size in the next 12 months.
Congratulations, that's exciting.
Yeah, no, it's exciting, and it adds a lot of extra kind of layers to, where my time should be spent.
Yeah.
It's really, I really try and focus on really figuring out kind of where I can provide the most value.
Yeah.
And spend my time on that. A lot of it comes down to, putting up a 2x2 and understanding kind of, where my cost of time is, my time value of money associated with specific tasks, and kind of prioritizing things accordingly. But then there are things that it's a little bit harder to put a dollar amount on, but that I know and we stress of like that are like of the highest importance and significance. So things like being involved on a day-to-day with each individual, helping each employee wherever they need help, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of really is part of our culture strategy. And so I find that as CEO, one of my main responsibilities is enhancing the culture of our team.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times it's things like, understanding a certain employee is going through some sort of struggle outside of work, right? And kind of being there for that person, help them understand, take them out to lunch, or just being there for different people. We really try and treat our company like a family.
Yeah.
And that means that like in a family, everyone's wearing every hat, right? All the time, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's important for me to kind of do that as well. But from a prioritization standpoint, I am very much into to-do lists. So I have different to-do lists for different kind of areas or components of my business. There are specific people on our team that report directly to me.
Yeah. And
then I have like sub-lists and sub-tasks for each one of them. Try and do at least one or two on the calendar, face-to-face meetings with each one of these people and kind of go through those checklists and kind of get progress on those to-dos during the week. But as your company scales and grows, for me, having checklists and to-do lists associated with different people and different kind of areas of our business has been super critical for me.
Yeah. You touched on it a little bit in terms of culture, and that's so key, obviously, for a small business, having some sort of like solid foundation there. Can you give us a quick snapshot of the Founder Show culture?
I've heard it described in a few different ways. We're definitely a loud group of people, but I think it all boils down to, from an outside perspective, we're looked at kind of maybe loud, a little boisterous, but internally, I think what kind of keeps it all together is love. And what I mean by that, without getting too cheesy, I think that we try and like instill from a culture standpoint a group of people who really care for each other, both inside of work and outside. And the way I like to think about it is, people kind of throw around the term and the idea of a work-life balance. Yeah. And at Founder Show, we really try and steer away from that. I think at this day and age, there's no such thing as that. And so what we really try and focus on instead is having a culture at work that enhances your life. Yeah. And feeding into your life in a way that enhances your work. So we want people to have incredible time outside of work, both with employees, without, with girlfriends, wives, boyfriends, whoever. But we want that positive energy to be brought back into work. We want people to leave work not feeling, oh man, thank God it's 5:30, got to clock out right now. Yeah. It's more like, they're leaving work and they're feeling energized and they're feeling excited because maybe they learned something they didn't learn that day. Maybe they helped out another employee in a way that they didn't think they could be helpful in or useful in. And maybe closing a deal they didn't think they could get done. But really creating that, utilizing work as a way to enhance your life and kind of give that positive energy to everything else you're doing.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing to hear. So, what keeps you up at night, Benji?
Other than my kid, what keeps me up at night? I think culture specifically. I personally love coming to the office and being part of this team that we've created every single day. I miss it when I'm not here. And the biggest fear I have is probably around when we're 60 people, when we're 100 people, when we're 200 people. I can't know everyone, right? Yeah. I can't have that. It's at a certain point, it's not scalable to have that really close relationship and understanding with each individual, and that scares me. We're trying to kind of systematize things so that that culture can be scalable.
Yeah.
And so thinking about that and thinking about, what things we need to do and change in order to make that happen, definitely keeps me up. I'm still a salesperson through and through, so
Yeah.
certain deals keep me up. We have pretty aggressive sales metrics for our team, and if someone's not hitting their individual goals, if the team's not hitting their goal, it keeps me up at night to try and figure out like what I'm doing wrong, or what I should be doing in order to help that person hit their goals.
Yeah.
I guess I kind of have, for better or worse, the personality in which I always try and think or assume that there's something I'm not doing, and that's the reason why a specific person is struggling.
Yeah.
So I try and take it all on internally first. And we have a really strong group of people, board members, and kind of people involved in the business that help me with a lot of that. But yeah, those are kind of the main things.
Yeah. Now, let's just kind of wrap it up, I guess. So for founders out there who are like tuning in or following up on this video later,
Yes.
what are the let's say, will you give us a few pieces of advice for them when they're thinking about starting and like running a business?
Yeah.
What are the key pieces there for you that's helped
man.
you really along the way? I know there are tons of them.
I'm so bad at advice because I find all advice to be like, advice can be good, but like the most advice that people get is like kind of like bullshit.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh yeah, of course you gotta like work hard.
But you can be candid. You can be candid.
No, but and the advice that I give is not necessarily going to be the right advice for everyone.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is to surround yourself with people who are supplements to you, people who kind of fill the gaps and the voids in which you kind of lack certain things or certain qualities or certain skill sets.
Yeah.
So I guess recognizing what you're good at and what you're really shitty at is really important.
Yeah.
I mean, I got super lucky. My first hire, who's now co-founder of the business, Carl, I understood early on, and that was kind of through a mentor, like what I'm really good at, what I should be focusing my time on, and what stuff like it's a shit show if I'm handling it.
Yeah.
And we hire based off of those things, and that's made my life less stressful and my life easier, and it's helped our company really grow and scale. The other thing is, I think early on, as an entrepreneur or founder, you don't realize kind of the emotional roller coaster that you're putting yourself through.
Yeah.
And there's constant doubt, not necessarily about the business, but maybe about your personal doubt about yourself. Can I do this? Or am I hiring the right person? And I think, advice there is like, just let it roll, like ride with it, like enjoy the roller coaster, because every single like entrepreneur experiences it, from the most notable and greatest entrepreneurs out there to the ones that have failed 10 times over.
Yeah.
They experience the same type of emotional roller coaster. And I think you just kind of have to like hug it and embrace it.
Yeah.
And know like, yeah, like there are certain days where I'm going to feel like
a little nauseous, maybe.
nauseous or frazzled, or just like,
yeah,
what the fuck did I get myself into? And take a step back. And what I like to do is, any concerns or stresses that I'm having, try and think about what were the stresses that I was having 6 months ago, and am I having the same stresses now? And the stresses that I'm having now, I couldn't even imagine I would have those stresses 6 months ago. Like I remember we're working this really big deal, 7-figure deal, like one of the biggest deals in our company's history, and it was going okay, and I was worried about that it might not close, and there were certain things that we didn't have the answers to, and I was talking to Carl, and I was like, what's funny is a year ago, I wouldn't even imagine or think that like I could even get stressed about a company this big trying to like thinking about working with us, because I didn't even think that was a possibility.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of like freaking out about it, I'm like, oh, we're probably making progress here, because our stresses now are on such a grander and bigger scale than they were a year ago.
That's perspective, I guess, is what
Yeah, I mean, look,
really helps out.
When people, someone goes from a sales role to VP of sales role, and then they're chief revenue officer, right? I mean, your stresses as a CRO are going to be so different than your stress as a salesperson.
Yeah.
And those stresses might be bigger and have more financial implications. But you take a step back and be like, wait a second. 5 years ago, I was worried about closing a deal. Now I'm worried about hitting 50 million for my company this quarter, right? I mean, it's like, yeah, it's a stress and it's a big stress.
Yeah.
But you kind of say I now get to own that stress.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, that's part of being the startup community, in that very high growth kind of environment. So you kind of definitely have to kind of embrace it, like you said.
Yeah.
And I think that's about all the time we have. So thank you everyone for joining us. Again, this is Benji, founder and CEO of Founder Shield. If you guys are looking for insurance, you can go to their website, foundershield.com. Pretty straightforward.
Simple as that.
And so we'll catch you again next week on Wednesday at 5:30. And if you want to see this video again, we have it on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.